Good evening. Buonasera a tutti. Good evening to everybody. My name is Corrado Paina. I'm the Executive Director of the Italian Chamber of Commerce of Ontario, Canada. We are at the third session, the third meeting with Friuli Venezia Giulia, a beautiful region on northeast of Italy. Please go, as soon as you can, go to Italy, go to Friuli Venezia Giulia. Before we talk about this city today, this small town, Cividale del Friuli, I would like to ask to Giovanni da Pozzo, President of the Chamber of Commerce of Udine and Pordenone, to say a few words. Giovanni, please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. My name is always Giovanni da Pozzo, the President of the Chamber of Commerce, and I have the pleasure to introduce my region, Friuli Venezia Giulia, a region with innovation and tradition. And we have two universities, we have many centers of research, and we are in the first region for a number of researchers for inhabitants. And this is very important. This region has important tradition as the food production. In every part of the region, we have a particular kitchen to taste the particular food from the ham, from the cheese, from the cubana, from the grappa. I remember one of the most important companies that produce the grappa is Nonino. You can find in Canada, in everywhere, this product. Well, this is an opportunity to connect our territory, in particular the territory with the 5 UNESCO sites, with different products of the territory.
Thank you, Giovanni. Today, as I said before, we're going to talk about Cividale del Friuli, a beautiful small town in Friuli Venezia Giulia. Famous because it was founded by Julius Caesar, the famous, as you remember, conqueror. And from there, we go to discover a particular, a traditional dish, Orzotto with asparagus, a typical dish that Deborah Verginella, executive chef, Millie Gallery Kaplan, will explain to us, will give us the deep recipe of this traditional dish, as I said. Also with us, the incredible Raffaella Zaccai. I really love the way she talks and the way she puts her passion into, explaining us the secrets of Friuli Venezia Giulia. Raffaella Zaccai is from the promotional office of PromoTurismo Friuli Venezia Giulia. Raffaella, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paina, and thank you. Hope you all to be here again to discover Friuli Venezia Giulia. My name is Raffaella. I work for PromoTurismoFVG, that is the Regional Tourist Board of Friuli Venezia Giulia. I'm really pleased to have you here also tonight to discover this area. We are just set in the northeast part of Italy, just in the heart of Europe, as you can see from the map. And the variety on landscape is one of the core of the personality of this territory. Our cities, UNESCO site, Adriatic Sea, Alps and Dolomite, bikes, excellent local food and best white wine. A variety, plenty of possibility for your holidays. Dolomites, Alps, gentle hills, lagoon, seaside, lots of outdoor activities from cycling, hiking, plenty of possibility, everything in short distances and off-beaten tracks. So I guess Friuli Venezia Giulia can be a next option for your holiday in Italy very, very soon. I would like to show you a little bit about the territory with this video dedicated to biodiversity of the region, because it's one of the peculiarity thing of this territory. So I kindly ask you to have the video and see you in a while. I guess you saw all the variety of the landscape in the area, so a very authentic Italy outside the mass tourism, off-beaten track, Italian lifestyle, lots of space, lots of wild nature, but lots of pearls of art, lots of art cities. And tonight it's time to discover together Cividale del Friuli. Cividale del Friuli, it's a lovely medieval town that is grown up just along the Natisone River, like we can see here in the picture, listed under UNESCO list since 2011. So I'm sure you can't wait to see now the video presenting the area, and later we have Tiziana, an official tourist guide of Friuli Venezia Giulia, that will tell you about a bit more about this area. Enjoy!
Quando viaggiamo pensiamo ai chilometri trascorsi, prima ancora del tempo. È come se fossero le distanze a calcolare la differenza tra quella che eri e quella che sei. Si superano i confini geografici per fare i conti con quelli nella nostra mente. Ci apriamo a tutte le esperienze nuove che ci vengono incontro, accogliendole senza paura. Ci catapultiamo in realtà sconosciute, affascinanti e profonde. Percorsi nuovi in cui non si teme affatto di perdersi. Ci immergiamo dentro delle storie in cui sembra di specchiarsi, che ci fanno riflettere, ridere e capire meglio la realtà che ci circonda. Capiamo che il nostro passato, in fondo, non è mai passato di moda. Ci piace ancora andare a frugare dentro i bauli per scoprire cosa ci abbiano lasciato dentro. E se penso al modo migliore per conoscere chi eravamo e chi siamo, immagino sia quello di tuffarsi incoscientemente in quei racconti fatti di luoghi e persone apparentemente lontani, ma che se interrogati sanno ancora parlarti.
Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Tiziana and I'm a tour guide in this beautiful region, Friuli Venezia Giulia. Today we are in Cividale del Friuli, a medieval jewel town. Now I'm gonna show you some pictures and tell you something interesting about this destination. First of all, a legend. This is the Ponte del Diabolo, the Devil's Bridge, on Natisone River. It dates back to the mid-15th century and it is a symbol for the town. The popular fantasy has connected its construction with the supernatural. According to the legend, the devil would have helped to build this bridge in exchange of the soul of the first person passing through. But the inhabitants of Cividale mocked the devil and sent through the new bridge an animal, a cat or a dog, according to the version. Cividale was founded by the Romans by Julius Caesar in 50 BC and was called Forum de Lulii, that is the town of Julius Caesar. From this name Forum de Lulii comes the name of our region, Friuli Venezia Giulia. In 568, Cividale became the capital city of the first Lombard duchy in Italy. The Lombards or Langobards were a Germanic people who ruled a kingdom in Italy between 568 and 774. Their name means long-bearded. Between 7th and 8th century, Cividale was a political and religious capital. It was a rich center, famous for its art and culture. It was the flourishing of Lombard art. A real treasure in Cividale is the Tempietto Longobardo, the Lombard Temple, the best-known expression of Lombard art and architecture in Italy. It was probably the chapel of the Gastaldaga, the palace of the Gastaldo, the representative of the Lombard king. Later, it became part of the Benedictine convent of Santa Maria in Valle. The construction and the decoration in stucco date back to the mid-8th century. It is one of the most important decorations dating back to the medieval times in Europe. The stucco decorations were colored and filled up with glass cameos. There are also beautiful frescoes that were added later between 13th and 14th century. In 774, Cividale and Friuli were conquered by the Franks of the king Charlemagne, and the name Forum de Lulii was changed into the name Civitas Austriae, the eastern city, and later into the present Cividale. To admire other examples of Lombard art, you can visit the Christian Museum and Duomo Treasury, Museo Cristiano e Tesoro del Duomo, and the National Archaeological Museum of Cividale, one of the most important in Italy for Lombard arts, where you can see, for example, beautiful jewels produced by Lombard goldsmiths. Today, Cividale is a small and quiet town with a beautiful medieval center, and one of the main pleasures is simply strolling around in the medieval atmosphere, relaxing with local food and wine. Cividale is a must for all lovers of good wine. The vineyards on the hills surrounding Cividale are part of Friuli Colli Orientali dock area. And there are also many possibilities for nature lovers, hiking, Nordic walking, bike rides, and the Alpe Adria Trail. The Alpe Adria Trail is one of the most famous long-distance hiking trails. It connects Austria, Slovenia, and Friuli Venezia Giulia in Italy, and it includes 43 stages. The paths in the area of Cividale are easy, immersed in the greenery of the vineyards, and without big differences in altitude. Thank you so much for your attention, and see you soon in Cividale del Friuli.
Thank you very much, Tiziana. I guess you put already Cividale in your bucket list for your next trip to Friuli Venezia Giulia. And I would love to give the stage to Deborah, who will teach us tonight how to cook this tasty Orzotto. Deborah, the stage is yours. Thank you very much.
I'm so excited to be with you again. The second evening of cooking food that is very close to my heart, as you know. My family comes from Friuli Venezia Giulia, Monfalcone and Grado. I have to just get that in there. And so Cividale is actually fairly close to Monfalcone, just north of us. And I have had many beautiful times just south of there in Cormons, drinking that wonderful wine. So when I see the Colli Orientali, it really brings back incredible memories of being introduced from
You feel home.
Yes, it is a second home for me, I have to admit. So tonight I am going to make Orzotto agli asparagi, and I have to admit that I actually prefer Orzotto to risotto, and I find barley is one of those grains that is so appealing. It keeps its bite. It's not as starchy as risotto, and so I find that the Orzotto will end up being a much kind of lighter dish. So what do we have? We have our pearl barley, and we'll get to that in a second. I wanted to highlight two kinds of asparagus. First, because my parents have incredibly strong memories of white asparagus, and the season of white asparagus in Italy was very exciting. And I also want to highlight the green asparagus. And we're very, very lucky here in Toronto and the GTA that a white asparagus has become a commonplace. So please try them if you have not tried them. Let's start this because I have a lot to talk about this dish. So it is made like a traditional risotto. So we're going to cook it slowly starting in a pan with some butter and some olive oil, some really good extra virgin olive oil. So I have a pan already heated, and we're going to start with, just for fun, I thought I would try shallots instead of onions, but if you have a white or a red onion, feel free to use it. So we are going to just saute. I'm going to add a little bit more of this beautiful shallot, and we're just going to chop it rather finely, but you know, so we will still see it in the end of the dish. So we have that. That will go right in the pan. And we're just going to get that caramelized and translucent. So while we're talking about that, the same elements, of course, for Orzotto as risotto, we have a stock. Now, I made a vegetable stock, but if you don't feel like making a vegetable stock, or it's, you know, something that you want to try and you don't have it, by all means, buy a good quality vegetable stock. Or when you are cleaning the asparagus from their tips, the ends, you know, just pop it into a bought vegetable stock and just let it simmer. What you want to do is not throw away any of those delicious ends. They have so much flavor. We're not going to eat them, but they're going to flavor that broth. So it's just going to impact and amplify that flavor of the two kinds of asparagus by using that liquid, that really precious liquid. Now, I want to do something a little bit fancy and fun. So I did reserve a few of those white and green asparagus. I put them in a pan because I want to show you a kind of really innovative way to serve this. And again, always highlighting the asparagus. So we're just going to add a little bit of kosher salt here. And again, a nice lug of good olive oil. We're just going to toss those around. And here in this oven, you know, I work for Miele Gallery Kaplan, so I'm very lucky that I get to use these incredible appliances. And this is actually a combination steam oven. So I have it on broil, and we are going to grill these asparagus. And it will take not very long. I can actually add a burst of steam with this oven, so don't worry if you can't. And, whoop, yep, we don't have the water. Hang on. Let me just get that live. Doing it live, you know, there's always some issues. Of course, just bear with me. I'm just going to put it on broil. No matter how prepared you are, you always miss something. Okay, we're going to broil those for about 10 minutes. So now we have our beautiful shallot that is nice and caramelized. The next step, again, like a risotto, with barley, you are going to rinse the barley. So there's a couple of differences. We have pearled barley that we're using in this. So I've rinsed it and drained it, and we're going to toast it with those onions right now. And we're going to turn up the heat a little bit. And we're going to just make sure that it's coated in that beautiful butter, shallot, and olive oil. And we're just going to toast it for a couple of minutes. That's it. We're going to add a splash of wine. I just thought we would use a rosé because spring is coming, and that nice little blush of wine. But if you have just white wine, that will do, of course. And we're just going to evaporate that wine in the barley. And this is the process that, again, becomes like the risotto, where once that wine, that alcohol has been evaporated, we're going to start to add our wonderful stock. And it's a really deep, deep color because I use all of those asparagus ends. And we're just going to slowly add a few ladlefuls of that. And we're going to let that evaporate as well. Now, a little bit about barley while this is cooking. Barley is a very ancient grain, and it comes in two ways. There's pot barley and there is pearled barley. The reason we're using pearled barley is because that outer hull has been removed and slightly polished. It makes it a little easier to digest, but more importantly, it actually cooks a little faster. The hulled barley, the pot barley, is actually great for soups and salads and things like that, where, you know, it has a hardier, crunchier texture. Now, one interesting thing, as I was, you know, going around looking for the ingredients, where most of them are at Italy except for the barley, and it was kind of humorous this morning because when I checked the bag, they had orzo pasta. Now, this is something that I find very common here, and that is that people, when you say orzo, they think of the long-shaped pasta that actually mimics the shape of the barley slightly. And so people kind of confuse that. So what we're using is actually barley, orzo in Italian, and we're using pearls barley. And now barley is actually a very ancient grain. So the first references to it are about the 10th century. In Old English, it was actually called ber, and the translation of it really meant first flour, and then later became the house of barley, literally the barn where barley was kept. So that's where the word originates. And so this is moving along nicely. And because it will take not too long, we'll talk a little bit about the asparagus. Now, what is the difference between white and green asparagus? So basically, white asparagus are grown in the dark. And so, of course, the chlorophyll doesn't form in these. And these are grown, they grow above the ground, right? So the sun gets to these. Now, you can see that they are different looking, even though they are the same kind of genus. So they're very different looking. These actually, because they're grown above, they can flower and seed. And the reason that they're grown in the dark is also a reason why they are a little more expensive. The labor involved in growing white asparagus is greater. Now these we're going to start to cut. These will actually take a little bit longer than the green asparagus to cook. So we're going to start to cut them. And the way I want to cut them is to maximize the area that we're going to bite into. So we're going to cut them on a hard bias, which just means a kind of steep diagonal. I like doing that because you're going to get a lot of bite in them. And so we're going to start to cut them all on a hard bias like that. And we're going to start to add them. They will take, as I said, longer than the green asparagus. And they're a little woodier. So because they're grown also in different ways, they have a flavor profile that's a little bit different from the green asparagus, which most people, now it's the season. So they're everywhere in the shops and they're really beautiful. So we're going to add these first, and it's almost time to add a little more stock. So I just want to show you the stage at which you add the stock. So you can see that the orzo is a fairly dry, it's almost absorbed all of the liquid. So that is the great, perfect moment to add more liquid. And again, I'm fine if people have questions during, or if you're just happy to watch for the moment. This is a longer process, and so any kind of comments are fine. We're going to just turn that up a little bit, and now I'm going to start to cut my green asparagus. Again, the same way. I always like to talk about the way I cut vegetables and the way I encourage people to cut vegetables, because, as you know, the way you cut a vegetable affects its taste and, of course, its texture. And so cutting it, again, with this bias is very different than cutting it in a kind of cylinder. The whole experience of that vegetable is very different. Let's start to add our green asparagus. And we should have it fairly al dente by the end of this. Let's add a few more. And again, you can follow sort of the weights and measures and all of that, but really this is a very intuitive dish. It's kind of hard to get wrong. So if you like less asparagus, more asparagus, it's really up to you. And the smell is just beautiful. You have a very kind of woodsy, earthy scent and flavor from this vegetable that is grown completely in the dark. And so you can imagine, if you haven't tasted one, that, you know, the sort of flavor of this really is reminiscent of earth and forest. And this one is really spring green, crisp, all of that. Let's check on our broiling asparagus over here. So it doesn't take long at all. We're going to leave that in a few more minutes. And what we're going to do is talk a little bit about the cheeses, of course, that we're going to use in this Orzotto. And the cheese that is, you know, the cheese par excellence of Friuli Venezia Giulia, the DOP cheese, is Montasio. And we talked a bit about Montasio last week when we were making fricco. And here again, I thought, you know, let's add a lot of complexity to this dish. And so we have, once again, a younger Montasio with an aged Montasio. This one is aged about 20 months, and this one is a very fresh cheese, and it's aged about 2 months. And so let's just start to cube that in. And remember, if you were with us last week, that Montasio is a perfect melting cheese. And so we're going to cut it into little cubes. And unlike a traditional risotto where you might grate Parmigiano in at the end, we are going to cube this so that it melts just near the end of the cooking time of this Orzotto. And then that is going to make the orzo, which, you know, as we said, is not the starchiest grain, into something creamy. So we'll just cube that up. And again, we need to add a little bit more of this vegetable stock. But if you have bouillon, of course, you know, let's not be too elitist about this dish, which is can be very humble and easy to make as well. And we're just going to let that simmer. Let's get our cheese ready. I love using two kinds of the same thing. I think, you know, there's a kind of spectrum of flavors that adds to a dish. So we have the two asparagus, the two cheeses, and also the two methods of cooking the asparagus, which again is going to really kind of expand the spectrum of what we're going to taste. And I wish you were able to taste it with me, but I hope you duplicate this at home. It's really easy to shop online too at Italy. It was such a pleasure to kind of just click on the white asparagus, green asparagus, and I bought really good butter there, and it was just wonderful. Pick it up, and then you can actually grab a really good coffee. So let's just take out our grilled asparagus. Yes, the difference between a risotto and an Orzotto. So you can see that the root, the ending of the word is the same. Risotto, we are going to be using rice. And the kind of rice that we're using, remember, is a very starchy rice. Arborio, Carnaroli, all of those types of rices. Hang on one second and I will finish. There we go. And remember that the process of risotto with that starchy rice is slowly cooking it so that the stock is actually releasing all of the starches. And that is really what is making the risotto creamy. Now, the Orzotto, because the actual grain, remember, is really a very hard, not starchy at all kind of grain, then we are going to cook it in the same way. However, we're going to add the cheese for creaminess. And I hope that explains it. And which other vegetables could you use instead of the asparagus? Well, the very first time that I had Orzotto was with peas, fresh spring peas, and a little bit of lemon zest and Parmigiano, and it was incredible. But I think if you think of risotto you can pretty much adapt both to the same kinds of recipes. You could do, wild mushroom, orzotto, pretty much they're interchangeable in terms of, the kinds of vegetables you could use. I mean, it's up to your imagination, really. So let me show you now these beautiful grilled asparagus that we have. So they're just nice and charred on the outside, and I want to show you how we're going to present them. Just to, again, we're highlighting the flavor of these two separate but same ingredients. Let me add a little more stock to this, and it's cooking along nicely. Now, the orzo in this orzotto, as I said before, it doesn't get creamy, but it does plump up. So you can see the difference in the size of the grain as it starts to absorb the liquid. I don't know if you can see, actually, but it really is a plump and lovely, lovely grain. And what I love about it is that it has a slight nuttiness and a bite. And so it's very much easier to keep orzo al dente more than the rice. Sometimes people overcook the rice, but the orzo kind of retains its bite. You really would have to overcook it a lot to kill the texture of this. And again, I find it really, really light. It's a lighter dish, lighter than risotto. So let's go to our handy blender, and I'm going to separate the white asparagus that we've charred. And you could do these on a grill as well. And you could do them ahead of time. So we're going to pop them into our blender. We're going to add a little bit of our vegetable stock. I think a little green one snuck in there. And we'll add a pinch more salt, a little bit of white pepper. And remember, white pepper is a great way to add some pepperiness to dishes that are not, that are white, and I really like using white pepper just to kind of make sure that there is that kind of bite to it, to the dish, but that it's a much gentler bite than black pepper. So let's blitz this with that stock. Now we want to get it as smooth as we can. The white asparagus are fairly fibrous, and so what we want to get is like a puree of this white asparagus. We'll do the same with the green, which I already have ready here. And now I'm going to start to add the cheese. And let me just try that. It's almost ready. So yeah, perfect timing. We're going to add, let's add the stravecchio first. It will take a little bit longer to melt. The one thing that won't happen is that little beautiful wave that tells you the risotto is ready. So this one won't kind of wave in the same way. And again, it's that starch element that is different. Now remember that also Montasio has a kind of higher, especially the stravecchio, the older, the aged one. So be very careful with the salt. It does need salt. I didn't salt my stock. And also be careful if you are going to buy a stock that there will be salt in that stock. So go easy with the seasonings if you're buying, bought ingredients like that. And so we're going to just melt that up. Now we're going to add our creamy Montasio. that 2-month-old, sweet, milky, it's pure cow's milk. Lactose-free, I think Raffaella told me as well, which I didn't know, so really easy on the digestion. In fact, this whole dish, super, super healthy. Barley has incredibly low amounts of sugar and high amounts of fiber. And of course, all those B vitamins and iron and niacin, all of those great things. Now, let's get ready to plate this beautiful dish. So we can see it. Now we're going to take our gorgeous puree, the white puree, and remember it has this kind of smoky, charred taste from the broiling, or if you're going to grill it. And we're going to add this to one side of the plate. And then we'll take our green puree. I did the same way. Again, just add a little stock to your blender. And this would be great with pasta as well, or even just as the bottom side dish of a piece of grilled meat or fish. So here we have those two beautiful purees as the base of our Orzotto. Now we're just going to correct the seasoning a little bit. Now that cheese is melting so beautifully. I want to show you. You can see those gorgeous little strings of deliciousness. I am going to add a little pinch of that white pepper. And it's ready when that liquid is almost all gone. Not completely. You do want it to have that creaminess of a risotto. And you can see how that happens with the cheese. It already looks different. That whole texture of the barley just changes because of that addition of that melty, melty cheese. Okay. We are ready to plate this. And let's just get a beautiful spears here. And to finish, let's just add a little bit of freshness with some lemon zest. And a few little tiny leaves of fresh thyme. A little bit of fresh oregano, just a leaf or two. That is Orzotto, served on a bed of charred white and green asparagus puree, and using white and green asparagus and Montasio cheese, those two beautiful aged cheeses. And hopefully you can see this plate. Very, very simple, very fast, and really easy to make, and super delicious. And I will meet you in Cividale to eat this dish. So if there are any questions for Raffaella, for myself, please go ahead.
It looks so tasty, Deborah. I mean, here it's almost 1 in the night, but I would like to have a fork and just have a little tasting of it. So nice. Really, really nice.
Instead of la spaghettata, we could have l'orzotto.
I'm in for the next dinner, definitely. Yeah, we have some questions here from the audience. Somebody's asking, how can I reach Cividale by train for Venice? So you will take a train from Venice down to Udine. It will take less than 2 hours. Then there is a local train from Udine to Cividale. It takes about 15 minutes. It's called Littorina. It's really an old line. Maybe you can get a vintage Italian train. The ticket going from Udine to Cividale, it's included into the FVG card. The FVG card, it's a visit pass that can be used all over the region. So it includes access to museum, transport, buses, and in this case includes also the train from Udine to Cividale. Are there museums to visit? Yes, there are. There is the Archaeological Museum that hosts a lot of works called the Lombards, and of course the Museum of the Dome. So I would say if you want to spend time in Cividale, at least half day to enjoy all the possibilities, starting from the Archaeological Museum, all the work with the goldsmiths of the Lombards. So you will have the possibilities to see all the developing of this Lombard art, and as well the Museum of the Dome. And then I would suggest to have a rest in one of the piazza in the town, and I guess you will have the most of your Italian holiday. And somebody's asking if you recommend to stay in hotel or B&B. Well, as Tiziana said during the little explanation, Cividale is very, very close to the Colli Orientali DOC area, and it's plenty of agriturismo and B&B. So I would suggest to be surrounded by the green of the vineyards, and maybe ride down to Cividale or just have a short ride. If you're coming, for instance, to Cividale and you would like to visit a winery, of course, if you're driving around, it's much better, so you can pop in and out and visiting all the local wineries. But in case you're coming by train, there are also some wineries that can pick you up at the train station in Cividale and drive you there. I mean, the closest is just less than 7 minutes driving from the city center, so it's very, very suitable to be reached, and you will be surrounded by pure nature, so you can have a perfect combination with art, Italian lifestyle, and aperitivo in the vineyards and in a winery. Most of the time, you will be able to meet the owner, so it will be a very Italian experience. Absolutely, and definitely recommend.
Oh, that's a great question. Which wines do you suggest to pair with? And are the asparagus organic? These, I don't believe, were organic. I actually haven't seen white organic asparagus, and I kind of, you know, travel around a bit to different green grocers and stores. But that's a great question. I haven't seen. I do see occasionally green asparagus that are organic. These are, I believe, they are not. But you can check the Italy website. And they probably have a description of them. Well, with wines, you know, we are, as Raffaella and Tiziana said, we are in the reign of this beautiful white wine country of the Colli. And you have, of course, you know, the Pinot Grigio, the Sauvignon, all of that. And then the local wines like the Tokai and just blanking on the other one. Maybe Raffaella can help me.
Ribolla Gialla. Ribolla Gialla, a native wine, yes.
Amazing wine. So that would be an incredible, you know, the grassiness and the earthiness of this with the acidity of those wines is a perfect pairing. And remember, when you're using especially a cheese like Montasio, which is the younger cheese, which has a higher fat content or that creaminess, all of those acidic white wines balance that fat so beautifully. So I think pretty much all of those wines from that area, a great white wine would be perfect with this dish, I think. Oh, any other cheeses? Sorry, I didn't see that part of the question. And any other cheeses? Well, we are talking about Friuli Venezia Giulia, so we are using Montasio, but it is challenging to find. It's not impossible to find. You have to go to, you know, better cheese purveyors and they will have it. However, if you do want to substitute, especially without those two ages of cheese, you could easily do one Parmigiano Reggiano, of course, is an obvious choice, with maybe a Fontina, or even, you know, the kind of Dutch frico cheese, which is not the frico we made last night, but any kind of, you know, really kind of young, melting cheese would be great. It adds so much creaminess to that Orzotto. And, you know, the wine for cooking, you know, really you're using so little wine, just to kind of, you know, balance that flavor of the fat of the olive oil and the butter. So that wine is just to kind of add another little layer of taste. I just used a blush kind of rosé today, but any white wine would do. I don't think the red would be good with this dish. It would, you know, color it in a different way and give a kind of tannin harshness that would probably not make the asparagus taste as good as they do with a kind of more acidic white wine. So, you know, any kind of white wine that you would have on hand that you would drink is good enough to just splash in that Orzotto.
Thank you, Deborah. We have another question here. Would you recommend Cividale, even though it's a small town? We would love to visit Friuli Venezia Giulia soon as we can see many places we can. Absolutely, it's a fantastic combination with art and food and wine experiences. So I would say in the morning you can have a stroll and visiting the landmarks of the town, starting from the Devil's Bridge, as Tiziana said, is the landmark in Cividale, doing, you know, some strolling around, sitting for an aperitivo, then going to visit the museum, the archaeological museum or the Dome Museum, and then later on having a lunch in the city center, or just moving for lunch and wine tasting in a local winery. So I guess a full day surrounded by Italy with art and food and wine can be a perfect pairing. And maybe you can have in one a local trattoria, a slice of frico, or maybe an Orzotto with asparagus, who knows? But I definitely recommend. It's easy to reach and very, very Italian outside of the Mass, so you will feel really local, and you cannot miss a visit over there. During the video, I saw someone canyoning. Where was the place? Well, there are some places you can do canyoning. You can do that in the lagoon. So just going in the south of the region, not that far from Aquileia, the first, let's say, episode we had in here. So by the lagoon in Grado or in Lignano, or if you saw a river, there was the Tagliamento River. There are excursions organized also over there. Or maybe are the lakes nearby the Dolomites. So there is plenty of possibility. For instance, if you do that by the lagoon, you can do also that at the sunset. So it's very charming, very unique to be surrounded by nature and just follow the flow, you know, of the day. Maybe a relaxing possibility. About the COVID situation in here, I mean, for the moment we are yellow zone, and we are really hope to do that, all the vaccination possible as soon as possible. But we're really happy to welcome you as soon as will be possible to show all the territory.
And I think, I know I'm biased, but some people think that all of Italy you eat well, and definitely there's great food in absolutely every region. But it's funny when people that have never been to the region, in my experience, have come, they've been surprised at some of these small towns, how well you eat. And even in some of the bigger cities where Friuli Venezia Giulia isn't always on everyone's stop to visit, and it should be. But I have great memories of my father-in-law, who was Milanese and a real gourmand. And when we took him around the summer, he stayed with us in Friuli. He actually said it was some of the best food he had ever eaten. And he did not give that compliment lightly. So I really think that that area is kind of a treasure. You have the sea and the mountains, you have the cheese, the fish, the meat, the dairy, all of that. It's very, very rich and enriched. So,
in very short time, actually. You can have, for instance, your breakfast in Udine, you can have a day trip to the Alps, so you can have your lunch in the Alps, and then for the evening, just less than 2 hours drive, you can have your dinner by the seaside.
It's
so,
amazing.
I mean,
and
all the Italian landscape.
Days, exactly. And you can see the Dolomites on the clear days, you know? So it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. There's one more question for me. So what do I mean by cutting the ingredients to have more flavor? Wonderful question. So what I always talk about in my classes is the way you cut anything, even a piece of meat, changes your experience of it. So when I am cutting what we call on the hard bias, which is just a way of saying a really hard angle, you know, a very sharp angle like this, what you're doing is exposing a lot of the area of the vegetable in a different way than a small bite. So you're getting more of the experience of that vegetable when you're biting into it. So that's what I mean. And is orzo a healthy carb? It actually is a very healthy carb. It's fairly low in gluten, very high in all of those nutrients that I mentioned, the B vitamins, niacin, magnesium, and again, high fiber. I believe it has about, you know, this plate, about 100 grams or so, has about 10% of your dietary fiber in the day. So it's very healthy and very good. That's the most important thing to eating well, is taste.
I have a question here. Can you explain, Raffaella, the importance of the borghi in Cividale? Where Cividale have these borghi that are like described as the district of the area, and there is a lovely event that usually take part in August that is called Palio di San Donato, where all the borghi, all the district, have a competition among them, like a medieval reenactment. So I would suggest if you come in here in August, it's also an event you should be in, because really charm, you have all the medieval flair over there, and it's pretty unique. I mean, the historical center light up with candle lights, it's really be in a world apart. Very, very charming. Thank you.
Another exceptional dish from Friuli Venezia Giulia. The ingredients are available here in Toronto at Italy, as you know, Italy Toronto. And if you want, please go online, Italy Toronto, and you will have a way to find not only just the ingredients of this particular dish, but all the beautiful products that Italy is displaying. Also, you might be interested to know that Italy will offer at the end of the fourth session, because there are 4 sessions, as you know, on the Friuli Venezia Giulia, we'll be able to offer a discount of 10% on its product. The next session will be about the mountain, will not be about the town, but about the Dolomites, the beautiful, mysterious Dolomites, and about the particular dish, the tiramisu from Tolmezzo. It's the recipe, the special recipe of Tolmezzo, another beautiful town in Friuli Venezia Giulia. And now I'm taking a little bit of time to thank all the people that made this program. I mean, in my opinion, excellent. First of all, I would like to thank Tiziana and Raffaella Zaccai from PromoTurismo Friuli Venezia Giulia, Executive Chef Miele Gallery Kaplan Deborah Verginella, but she introduced us to another fantastic dish, and Giovanni D'Apuzzo, President of the Chamber of Commerce of Udine and Pordenone. Finally, last but not least, and you know, the team of Eco Canada, Richard Bressan, the person behind the organization, Ilaria Venoso, the director of this specific program, these 4 sessions, Mary Chirico, and all the other people of the office who have been working hard in making possible this event. One last thing, I urge you really to become a member. This year we have a special offer and a COVID offer, an entry level at $200. Why becoming a member? Because one of the things that we do is really to shorten the distance between Canada and Italy. These 4 sessions are about that. Please become part of a network that is very active, very passionate about Italy and Canada. And thank you again for your participation this evening. Thank you.